You're listening to The Portfolio Composer, hosted by me, Dr. Garrett Hope, where business and creativity go hand in hand. Join us at theportfoliocomposer.com for news, talks, and workshops. This episode is brought to you by Dorico, the music notation software from Steinberg that's designed to save you time. Dorico 4, Steinberg's latest major version of music notation and composition software for Mac OS and Windows, is packed with powerful new features that are designed to accelerate your workflow and make it quicker and easier than ever to go from inspiration to finished product. If you're a composer, arranger, or orchestrator, you'll be delighted by the sophisticated new tools on offer. And there are improvements across the whole application, whatever your focus. For more information and to download a free 30-day trial of Dorico 4, visit www.steinberg.net/TPC. This episode is sponsored by Found, the all-in-one banking service ideal for freelancers. Go to theportfoliocomposer.com/found to set up your free account today. Hello and welcome to episode 250 of the Portfolio Composer podcast. I'm your host, your coach, and your teacher, Garrett Hope, and I'm so excited that you are listening to this episode today. Thank you for downloading it. And if you are a creative, a composer, a musician, or an artist of any type, I am glad you're here because this is about helping you build your career. This podcast launched in February of 2015, and now it's 250 episodes later. I'm so excited about that. Today's episode is pretty special. This is with my friend, my colleague, Dr. Heidi Kay Begay. Heidi and I started a relationship a couple of years ago when she invited me to be on her podcast, Flute 360. Since then, we have done some coaching work together, and we have built an entirely new business called The Pivoting Musician with its own podcast, which you can find in your favorite podcatching app, The Pivoting Musician. Heidi is a flutist, an educator. She is also a business coach and teacher and all-around great person. Heidi also has figured out how to fund what she's doing, the projects she's working on, her own podcast and other things through sponsorships. She's kind of a sponsorship whiz. And this is where I think funding is going in the future, which might be the most helpful part for you out of this conversation, along with the mindset about what it takes to build a business, find your people, scale relationships, and make things happen. Enjoy. This is Dr. Heidi Kay Begay, my colleague and friend. And we actually recorded an episode almost a year ago. Heidi, it's May 20th, and I'm looking at my notes. We recorded on June 17th last year.
Did we really?
Yeah, and I started to edit that recording, and I said, wait a second. We have built the second iteration of the summit. We have created a course. You and I have formed a new business together. We have done webinars and a whole bunch of stuff. That episode can't go out. It's way out of date. So I texted you and said, we have to do this again.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not holding it against you.
Did I take forever to release my episodes?
But no, I'm really excited because that just means that we are growing together. And you're right, we started a business together.
We did.
In less than 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And we both started up a second podcast.
Yep.
And I've learned a lot from you. We released the beta for our Pivoting Musician class and teaching those 4 phenomenal founding members and learning from you and going through content like that. You and I are not the same person from a year ago.
No.
I'm looking at a different person right now.
Literally. All my plastic surgeries. No, I have not had plastic surgery.
Oh, that's what it is. Your nose does look a little smaller.
What? My most prominent feature? What?
No, the beard. That is
that
the
was
biggest
there.
change.
Yep, last year. Yeah, it's more like Heraclitus. Was it Heraclitus who said a man never steps into the same river twice?
I don't know.
Well, you've heard that ancient Greek saying, right?
I have not.
The idea is, the waters have changed, right? You're literally not stepping into the same waters because they've flowed on, but you've changed, you've grown, even from one day to the next. And I love that idea that as we come back to do these things, such as re-record a podcast episode, start a business, whatever it is that we're doing, we're constantly in this process of growth and development.
Yeah, see, this is why I have conversations with you on a weekly basis, because it gives me a sliver of hope of obtaining new knowledge.
What do you mean?
I always learn something from you.
Well, I make everything up.
Oh, okay.
No.
I don't think you can make up a Greek saying.
I sure can. How would you know?
Well, I always Google things later.
Okay, well, someone will fact check me on that.
Perfect.
It better be you.
It will.
Okay. No, that's a real thing. And anyway, I wanted to have another conversation with you because I want to introduce you to the Portfolio Composer audience because you are doing cool things. I think we're doing cool things, but you're doing cool things. And let me tell the story about how we first met. Is that okay?
Please.
All right. It was 2020.
It was only 2 years ago.
COVID had just started. It was brand new. We were all trying to figure out what's happening, and the government was shutting everything down, and we're trying to pivot. And you reached out and said, hey, I have this flute podcast. Would you like to be on it? And in your very cheerful, bubbly way. And I wrote back and said, okay, but why don't we do a two-way thing?
Yeah.
Which I think kind of caught you by surprise.
No, that's always my intention.
Okay.
But because when I reach out to new people and we don't have a founding relationship, I always want to come in and not scare the squirrel. I don't want to I do this, nobody can see me right now, but my hands are come here, with a little piece of crumb. I don't want to shock the squirrel. So I had that intention of doing a crossover, but I didn't be hey, dude, you don't know me. I want all these things from you. Full circle. That was my intention. So when you said, oh, let's do a crossover, I'm that's what I wanted to do.
Okay, I'm going to react to that, but I just want to know, I'm giggling a lot because Heidi and I have a really good relationship and we trust each other. And when we get together, I think we laugh quite a bit. And you're just scaring the squirrel. What a great phrase.
Oh,
and
really?
Then you were instantly like that dog in the movie Up that was trying to talk and then squirrel. And I'm like, oh, that's so Heidi. You say I'm Shifu from Kung Fu Panda. Well, you're the dog from Up.
Am I?
Squirrel.
In more ways than one.
Okay, so
back to your story. I'm sorry.
This is not going to be a serious episode at all. But anyway, I love what you said because this embodies a big part of your operating philosophy and the way you do business is this generous offer of how can I help you first? Because you were basically saying, come on my podcast, let's talk, and we can amplify your platform. That was your offer to me.
Yep.
And I think that's a great way to build a business.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not perfect, but I do try to lead with a heart of servitude.
Mm-hmm.
Because business is based on people, whether it's somebody in your business, like an employee, a virtual assistant, somebody designing your website, or it's a person in the sense of a client, a sponsor, a customer. It's all people.
It's all people. Yep.
Yeah.
And to continue the story, then we did record an interview with me for her show, which Heidi actually released fairly quickly. So you can go to the Flute 360 show about 2 years ago. And there I am talking about all these things. But since then, Heidi and I have worked together professionally in multiple ways. And in spring of 2021, after the first Ultimate Music Business Summit, I knew I needed help if I was going to grow this. And Heidi, I knew you and the qualities you bring to the table as a business person, as a thinker, and very highly organized and empathetic and all the things. And I think we work well together. And I invited you to be on the executive team to help make it bigger and better and badder and more beautiful. All the B words that we used in the pivoting.
Bolder.
Bolder. That's right. Beefier? Maybe?
Good.
Okay. And then we brought Arthur on. And so you and I have built a new version of the summit, and we're already working to build the next one. And then you reached out to me during this whole process and said, okay, I have a dream. What if we help musicians pivot?
I had the dream because you had laid out a foundation so well. Going back to my episode with Garrett, where I featured him and the portfolio composer over 2 years ago, I believe, this is a little fun fact about me, I have 99% of my podcast episode numbers memorized. And that's a lot because I have over 200 through Flute 360. But anyways, I digress. Garrett's episode, I believe, was episode 126. And the reason why I can remember that is because our mutual friend, Jason Heath, is featured in episode 125. Anyways, what the listeners need to know is from that moment until now, I am shocked and amazed of how one email can totally change the trajectory of somebody's career. If somebody would have told me that I would have built a class, built a business, helped an international music business summit from one dude in Lincoln, Nebraska, because of a conversation in episode 126, I would have been like, all right, well, you need to pinch me because there's no way. And I would like to say in a very vulnerable state, because I don't mind, I'm a podcaster. We just, put everything out there. That, and I don't know if you know this, Garrett, but of the 200 episodes or the 125 episodes up into that conversation was the most vulnerable that I ever was in those 2.5, 3 years through the podcast.
Really?
Yeah. You remember we had to actually stop because I was in tears. Do you remember that?
I remember it being a pretty vulnerable conversation.
I was in a very dark and deep space. I had graduated 2 years ago with my doctorate. I was trying to find my way.
Right.
I was knocking on the traditional doors. Nothing was happening. And then I'm pivoting, kind of. I didn't know that I was pivoting, but I was pivoting into being this digital entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And then I think you said something that was totally just a general statement. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then the floodgates just poured out. And you were so kind. I mean, we were strangers. You didn't even know me. And I had received really bad news that morning. I had received like 2 rejections of 2 flute professor jobs. And then I had to go into recording mode. And that's why I was in that state. So I say all of that because I think a lot of people, myself included, we feel like we have to sometimes put on a good face and put up this facade of like, okay, I'm in recording mode, with another professional. And at the end of the day, we're all human, right? And I'm so thankful that my heart in that moment was able to express itself at the time of, my true reality, because I really, I'm a reflective person. I like to reflect. And I think, looking back, in hindsight now, seeing everything that we have built together, I wonder if that moment of vulnerability really helped our relationship form much quicker and faster.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because if you had come in, we did our 45-minute talk and then you left, that could have been it. But something and I think it's a God thing. I'm pretty sure it's a God thing. But you were so kind to kind of virtually wrap your arm around me and say whoa, I'm here. How can I help? What do you need from me right now? I mean, it was instantaneous. And then wiped off my tears and we continued recording. And you won't hear that in the episode because my husband is an audio engineer, but I felt the need to share that with your listeners because it's not always pretty. It's really messy.
It can be.
And sometimes the messiness, oh my goodness, so much beauty can come from that. And I think that messiness and that vulnerability in that moment, a seed was planted for us, but then I think that seed grew much quicker, where then you felt, oh my goodness, here is somebody that I can help. And then you instantaneously invited me to come to your pivot challenge and then to speak at UMBS 2020. So full circle, there was a connection here back to the original conversation. You were listing off all the things that we've done together, right? And I go back to that moment and I think, I wonder how much of that really fueled that fire pretty quickly. But all that's to say is yes, I had a dream about the pivoting musician and you helped fulfill that with me, but it's because of everything that I saw you lay out. So when I went to your pivoting challenge, when I saw you create UMBS 2020 on your own and the mission and the vision that you had for this online summit, and then being a part of 21 UMBS, when I came to you and said, I have this dream, really, it goes back to you because I saw an opportunity where I was like, ooh, what if we merged that pivoting challenge, that UMBS thing, smushed it together, threw in some pain points that I knew musicians were having because I was one of them. And from our many conversations, I knew you at one point were one of them.
Yeah, I've been there.
And then the pivoting musician was born. So that was a long-winded answer. But there was a lot of like context there where, yes, I had a dream, but really you planted that seed in my mind, in my heart. And so I can't thank you enough.
Oh, well, I guess you're welcome. I'm proud of what we've built. I'm proud of the summit. I'm proud of the pivoting musician and our podcast. But more than that, and I think this is the heart of what we've been talking about today, is this relationship piece of building businesses. You and I each have our own businesses. We have this business together, but we're trying to really genuinely serve others. And I can see you always put your audience's needs first.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. This episode is sponsored by Found, the all-in-one banking service ideal for freelancers. Found features everything the small business owner needs, including generating and sending invoices, sending payments, automatic bookkeeping, setting aside a percentage for taxes, and detailed income, spending, and profit and loss reports. You get all of this with no account fees, minimum required balances, or credit checks. It's the perfect banking solution for freelancers like you. I was able to set up my account in minutes. It's painless and the interface is fantastic. I'm particularly pleased with how easy it is to access everything I need from the app. They even send you a business debit card right away. They're FDIC insured just like the big banks, but without any of the big bank headaches. Go to theportfoliocomposer.com/found to set up your free account today. And could we riff on that for what that looks like for the people who are listening? How can they incorporate that into what they're doing as creatives, as composers, as business owners? Do you have any advice or tips on how to put your audience first?
Ooh, I love that question. Yes. So it is about you, like in the perspective, I'll just point the finger at me. It's about me to some degree. But it's not. It's about them. It's about your listener. It's about your audience. It's about whoever you're reaching out to. You know, there are some podcasts out there that, again, no judgment, but a lot of times I see these hosts, you know, putting out content and how they design the podcast. And I'm using podcasts as an example because we're both podcasters, but I think it's applicable to a lot of different things or a lot of different niches wherever you are. And I see a lot of podcast hosts put the spotlight on them, you know, and I get it. They're the host, but at the end of the day, you need listeners. If you want your show to be successful, like you're putting out content to serve people. So what are the people saying? What are they thinking about? What keeps them up at night? And so the big tip that I can give anybody right now, this is like a coaching tip that is a total freebie. I wished I would have known this in the early days of my podcasting career. Do deep dives with your listeners. Check in on them once a quarter, twice a year. It doesn't have to take much, but once a quarter, I pull 5 of my Flute 360 listeners into a Zoom call for 20, 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be long. I pre-plan out some questions and I say, hey, what are your pain points around X topic? Because I want to be in touch with my listeners. If I'm not aware of what they're thinking, what they're fearing, what their hopes and dreams are, then I'm removed. I'm detached. And then I'm over here singing la, la, la and putting stuff out through the microphone and out into the airwaves that does not resonate with them. I'm missing the point. I'm totally missing the target. And so, you know, what I've learned the most as a business owner is that time is so precious. The more gray hairs I'm getting and the more wrinkles I'm getting, I'm like, oh my gosh, time is so precious. If I'm going to do this podcast thing, and I'm going to do it well, I want to impact people. I mean, I have a Chicago measly voice. Yeah, okay, fine. I like to hear myself talk sometimes because that's, once you get to know me, like that's very Heidi. And Garrett's laughing because he knows it's true. I'll be the first to admit it. I'm a talker. I like being the center of attention just a little bit. That's just my personality. But at the end of the day, since time is so precious, if I just get on a microphone and just talk about anything that only interests me, then I'm only serving me. If I'm going to do it, and if I'm going to do it well, like I want to have an impact. I want to have this lasting legacy. Mm-hmm. I want people to be listening to episode 1000 20 years from now and saying, oh, wow, this is really good. And a lot of it, as I was doing more research about health and how to be more musically expressive through your instrument and things that really were like boggling me, in a certain season of my life. And I was talking to the experts. I'm like, oh, I wished I would have had this information when I was younger. So even if a podcast listener never signs up to a coaching session with me, they never sign up for a class. I hope they do. But if they were never to work with me one-on-one, I still want them to be moved. I want their needle to be moved in whatever area they're seeking for that growth. If I can give that to them, if I can plant a new seed or shift their paradigm or just expand their mind just even a little bit, then I've done my job.
Yeah. Well said. I like it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. It made me think as you were talking about how the vehicle with which you are serving your audience could be any number of things.
Yes.
You chose podcasting as one of the primary vehicles.
Yep.
And this actually is one of the first questions I ask almost all the guests, which is what's in your portfolio of income producing activities? And really, to put it a different way, or what are all the vehicles with which you're serving your audience? And through those vehicles, you generate income by saying, I can help you. So what are all the things that you do, Heidi?
So I do have a portfolio career, and half of my portfolio includes the JK Media Productions Company, which I co-own with my husband. And we do audio and video editing for musicians and for podcasters. And then the other half of my portfolio is then broken up into like subsections. So digital courses, I have 2 outside of ours, and it's all about how to podcast and how to obtain corporate sponsorships. And then the third digital course is with you, the pivoting musician. I am an adjudicator, so I'll get hired to adjudicate, to be a clinician at a festival, at a summit, whatever. Affiliate links. Corporate sponsorships is a big piece of the pie. I have worked with over 25, maybe even over 30 companies through corporate sponsorships. That actually was the down payment of our home.
Isn't that amazing?
Which is pretty cool. Yeah. And flute lessons, flute master classes, flute camps, a lot of traditional, hats that we all wear to some degree, but then some untraditional hats like the corporate sponsorship thing, the podcasting thing, more untraditional hats. But yeah, I think I listed off, I think, I counted it up one time because I was just curious, and I was teaching like a financial part to a group of my clients, I think a year ago. And I think I counted it up. I think I have like 7 or maybe even like 8 different streams of income.
Yeah.
Reason why I highlight that is because I think it's really important for somebody who is seeking a portfolio career or they have a portfolio career. I think one of the huge benefits of having a portfolio career and being this, digital musicpreneur or musicpreneur to some degree is you don't have all your eggs in one basket. Mm-hmm. So if I lose my adjunct music teaching job at the community college, or say I don't lose it, but say there's not enough enrollment for the semester, that class is not going to take. Well, where is that $1,000 a month now going to come from? And I've been there. Like, the community college says, okay, you'll be teaching 4 classes this semester. You already start budgeting like, okay, that's going to be X amount of dollars a month. I can pay my bills with this. Okay. And then weeks before, not even weeks before, maybe a week before, days before the class is supposed to start, they'll say, oh, there's not enough enrollment. 2 of your classes are gone.
Yeah.
Well, shnikes. Okay. Well, now my income is cut in half. Bringing it back full circle, I think having different streams of income is healthy. Because, if corporate sponsorships dips in one quarter, then I can amp up my audio production projects. Or if it's summertime and not a lot of my students take in the summertime, okay, I'm going to amp up my digital courses. And so there's this going on, and I think it's good. I think people need to seek that out, actually.
I think you and I are in agreement about this. Well, I'm 99.99% sure, but you and I both think the industry has changed. Traditional music jobs are going away, and the typical path of graduate degrees and then teaching at university or getting that lifetime career position in an orchestra, they're fewer and further between. So would you agree that it's normal to create a portfolio lifestyle right now? Like that is the future for creative individuals?
110%. I think at some point within, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would think in the next 5 to 15 years, these jobs aren't even going to be posted. They are vanishing quicker than lightning.
Yeah.
5 years seems kind of quick, so maybe more like 10, 20 years, but it's changing, and it's changing rapidly. And I think if you aren't in this portfolio, or obtaining this portfolio career as of yet, that's okay. I would say get ahead of the times. If you are hearing mentors and coaches in your life, like the Dr. Garrett Hopes, saying this, and you hear it on repeat from not just Dr. Hope, but from other mentors, and you hear it kind of popcorning around in your life, take notice, start now. Man, if I would have known that my podcast was actually going to be the premise of my career when I founded it in 2018, I would have ran with it much quicker than I had in 2020. I didn't, but I kind of wasted 2 years chasing an adjunct flute professor job that was going to pay me $700 a month.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And at one point, I am so grateful for my husband, and he's my best friend. At the end of those 2 years, at the beginning of the pandemic, when I was offered a job in China, it was a nice job. They were going to pay me $75,000, $80,000 a year, travel, health insurance. I worked hard for that job. It was something that really just lit up my life because of the opportunity, building a music curriculum from the ground up. I've always had this international itch in me, embedded in me. My dad was born and raised outside of Tokyo, Japan. My grandfather comes from Central African Republic. So growing up, we were immersed in different cultures and different languages. So being offered an international job in Shanghai, China was just the cherry on top. Anyways, all of that's to say is then the pandemic hit, that job was taken away. And then I had to get really creative, and I was lovingly forced in this digital space. And it just happened to be that for 2 years, from 2018 to 2020, I had built a podcast where the foundation was laid. All I had to do now was shine a light onto me and how I could help people, and shine a light onto my different products, services, and offerings. Before, it was more of an educational tool. And then once I had that paradigm shift of, this is ridiculous, I put my life on hold. I was waiting. I put my husband's life on hold. We were sleeping on a cot in a small studio with all of our stuff put into a storage unit because we were waiting to move wherever Heidi got the job. And I was, not desperate, but I was so stubborn. It's I'm going to get that one job, because 13-year-old Heidi had this idea, and she was going to be a professor at a college. And little did I know, the times were changing so quickly. But I was adamant. I wasn't willing to see opportunities that were around me because it wasn't in that traditional sense. I thought I had failed. I thought because it didn't look like what my mentors and what their careers looked like, that I had failed. And so things were happening around me in 2018, 2020 through the podcast. But I was like, oh, that's a nice little side thing. Oh, that's cute. And then when that traditional China job got canned, it was whoa, it was a huge wake-up call. And then that's when, insert you, that's when you came into my life. And then you started helping me pivot and see, those opportunities that I just had mentioned. They are all around you. I'm so grateful for that, because it helped my pivot tremendously. So I hope there was a point in that. I kind of digressed a little bit, but did I answer your question?
You answered it beautifully.
Okay.
Yeah. And now together we are building a thing to help other musicians make pivots in their lives too. So for the listeners' benefit, tell us about TPM.
Yeah. So the pivoting musician, basically, the premise is we want you to be your own music boss. If the traditional path is not unfolding for you the way you had anticipated, that is okay. Yeah. Just like, what I said just very candidly just now, I thought I had failed. And you may resonate with that to some degree. You haven't. And a lot of this aha moment for me was the market is overly saturated. There aren't enough jobs to go around. So it could boil down to not the fact that, oh, you're not talented enough or, oh, you don't have the right degrees on your CV. It really could be just the mere fact that there are too many musicians out there with a master's degree or a doctoral degree and not enough jobs to be passed around, right? I mean, that's a pretty simple fact, but I think we forget to look at things like that are so obvious because our heart is hurt or we're in pain. Or do you resonate with that to some degree?
Yeah.
So we not avoid, but we miss those signs and we forget those facts, or we don't look at those obvious, things because we're just hurting. At least for me, that was my story. But the funny thing is, that's what we teach in the Pivoting Musician. We teach you that you can be your own boss. You can create those unique opportunities that not just only fulfill you creatively, but financially. And the minute you kind of sit in the driver's seat and say, hey, I have a little bit, now I feel like we don't always have all the control in the world. Life is life. But if you sit in the driver's seat, you have a little bit more control than you think you do.
Yes. Well, you have enough control where you get to create the future and you're not relying on somebody else to say yes to you.
Yeah.
You're not waiting for someone else to hire you for the job. Instead, you get to serve a group of people in multiple ways.
Yes. And that's the idea of the Pivoting Musician is we want to empower and encourage these pivoters to realize that beautiful fact. You can reach out to people and create that album that you want to create. You can bring people into your orbit to put together a really beautiful concert series, to write a book, to put together a digital course, whatever your heart's desire. If that is something in your core that you really want to put out into the world, then do it. And that's something, as you and I were going through Slack and writing out ideas and subtitles and titles and figuring out the name for the Pivoting Musician, the thing that I kept saying in Slack over and over again is the thing that you just said, say yes to yourself. You can say yes to yourself. And just because a committee or a bunch of people on the panel aren't saying yes to you, it doesn't mean that you don't have something unique to offer this world. You do. And the funny thing is, life is so ironic, but the more that I'm in this digital space and the more that I'm in the space of being my own boss, we've had candid conversations about this, Garrett, earlier. I realize that actually, I think I'm built to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, me too. This episode is sponsored by Dorico, the future of scoring. And we want to feature real Dorico users so you can know that real composers out in the world today are using Dorico to make their careers happen.
My name is Tony Dobek. I am a composer, sound designer, and music production teacher from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Price was one of the main obstacles for me. However, their cross-grade pricing made it really easy and much more accessible. My workflow is just much easier. The interface is clear and easy to navigate. Took a lot less time to put a great looking score together. It's so much easier to control and get things done without pulling my hair out. The engraving tab is really spectacular. The amount of control I have over almost every aspect of the score is miles ahead of any other scoring software I've used. Not only does it make it much easier to engrave a standard score, but Dorico is becoming increasingly easy to create contemporary scores that call for unique layout and notation options. Their customer support is the best I have ever worked with. They are easy to talk to, they're easy to get a hold of, and I'm confident that I'm able to get a clear answer from them right away. And their play screen is extremely unique, and I love the way it's laid out and functions very similarly to a DAW. And the fact that I'm able to change the playback instruments to the same professional level software instruments I'm using in my DAW is incredible. I would absolutely recommend Dorico to anyone, teachers, composers, any musician. It's the future of scoring software, and it makes my life as a musician so much easier.
To download a free 30-day trial of Dorico 4, visit www.steinberg.net/TPC. I discovered that I'm not a good employee because I chafe at people telling me exactly what to do, and I want to implement my ideas. And often when you're an employee, you have to implement your employer's ideas when they tell you to do it.
Yeah. And come to find out, I have a lot of ideas.
Yes, we both do. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, when you and I get together, just so the listeners know, we spend more time coming up and daydreaming about what could be. And that's actually really stimulating for me, and it's exciting.
Yeah. Same for me.
Okay, where can people go to learn more about the Pivoting Musician, and what resources are available?
So we have a podcast. So outside of Flute 360 and outside of the Portfolio Composer, we co-host the Pivoting Musicians podcast, and you can find that through your favorite podcast app. People tend to like Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, so check it out there. You can go to thepivotingmusician.com. We have a pivoting post, and we are going to be scheduling some upcoming webinars to launch Alpha. And when I say alpha, I mean like version 2.0 of post beta. We learned a lot in beta, and we are relaunching it to be bigger, better, badder, bolder. That's our website. Those are our podcast apps, and sign up to the newsletter because we want to get to know you. And when we say that, we really mean that. There are a lot of people who hit reply to those newsletters, and I'm so grateful to you, because your stories and your path inspire Garrett and I, and we hit reply. So when that newsletter gets sent out and you tell us of your pivoting story, your struggles, your pain points, the goals that you have set out for yourself, we hit reply and we start that dialogue with you, because we're doing this because we want to propel you forward. We're not doing it to hear, well, you don't really have an accent, Garrett. We're not doing it to hear my nasally Chicago voice. We're not doing it to hear Garrett's Nebraskan voice.
Oh, I grew up in Colorado. Give me some more credit.
Colorado. We're doing it being funny and cute, but we're doing it because we really have a heart to serve you, and we want to see you not just survive, but thrive. We really want to see more musicpreneurs out there creating amazing, phenomenal things and leading a life that really makes you proud.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, because I know you have other things, I want to talk about corporate sponsorships, because this is a passion of yours. And like Heidi said, she has a whole digital course on how to find sponsorships for what you're doing. Heidi, I'm convinced that we're in the age of the corporate sponsorship. So historically, the major benefactors for music it was the church, and then it was royalty, and then we're just coming out of a phase where it was publicly funded, government institutions and grants and colleges and universities. And the money right now, I think, is corporate sponsorships. Tell me if I'm wrong. And then I want you to talk a little bit more about how people can look for and find the money to fund their dream projects, whether it's an ensemble, a recording, a performance, a composition.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. And your explanation of why you think we're in this era of corporate sponsorships and getting our projects funded by corporations is genius. And I would like for you to actually explain why you think that. I'm turning it back to you.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared for that. Well, I think, Heidi, a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's getting harder and harder to find public funds to do what we want. And more creative people, composers, artists, performers, who feel like their only way to make their project happen, whatever it is they're trying to do, is to get that particular grant, or to get that, well, it's getting permission from someone who will say, here's the money you need. And I flip that on its head and I say, well, if you're serving your audience well, the money's going to be there. And with that same kind of thinking of who is the audience, whether they're funding it through ticket sales or buying recordings or whatever, there is another group of people who are serving the same or similar audiences, and these are businesses. And that includes banks and insurance companies and retailers and instrument manufacturers and whatever. But if all we have to do is stand in the middle and connect the audiences, and I could say, hey, I'm working to do this thing. This is who I want to serve. This is how I want to serve them. I know you're interested in offering something to this audience, or you want to serve them too. Would you help me make this dream a reality? And I can help you get and connect with these audiences. So that's how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
I feel like there is a lot of money in the marketplace right now because businesses want to engage their communities. They want to make things better. They want to participate in philanthropy. They want to participate in artistic efforts. They want to be a part of our culture beyond just selling a thing. And that's why we're in the age of corporate sponsorships.
Yeah. And I wanted you to explain that because you do it so well. And I've heard you say it a couple times, and there's no point in me trying to like reiterate or try to like paraphrase your answer because you just chef's kiss. It's on point.
You're the sponsorship queen. You're the one who knows how to get them.
Well, the funny thing is, I'm going to throw myself under the bus. I accidentally fell into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fell into it. I saw an opportunity. Again, it's kind of like, what you taught me like 2 years ago. Heidi, your blinders, it's good to have goals. It's good to be super focused on getting that thing, whatever your goal is. But your blinders are so tight. It is like they aren't moving. So just, nobody can see me right now, but I'm just like slowly widening my blinders, and once you do that, like, oh, look. So the only thing I will give myself credit for is I saw an opportunity and I jumped at it. What I mean is like I fell into it accidentally in the sense of I didn't realize like how you explained it right now of being in this era of corporations funding these projects. I didn't realize this pendulum was swinging that way. So I kind of got lucky in the sense of like now I'm seeing it more and more. I'm like, ooh, I fell into a good thing. And I think, no judgment, again, I fall into this camp in so many different areas of my life. But I think that's a mistake that budding new entrepreneurs, musicpreneurs make, is they don't grab an opportunity when they see it. They think, oh, that's for somebody else. Kind of like, who am I to reach out to that corporation? And that imposter syndrome gets the best of them. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, ooh, I would love Haynes Flute Company to sponsor this concert tour, or I would love for Powell Flutes to sponsor the CD, or I could go on and on. If you have an idea, run with it. All it takes is, a 30-second email to introduce yourself, tell the company what you love about what they're doing, what they're putting out into the world, of course, coming from a very authentic and genuine place, and then tell them your vision. The worst that can happen is that they say no. That's it. The sun comes up tomorrow. The earth keeps spinning and rotating on its axis. Life is good. But if you don't take action and if you don't try, you will never know. So what's, the Michael Jordan statistic? He missed 9,000, 10,000, a million, shots in basketball, right? But he's an NBA legend. So all of that's to say is, I'm very blessed to have seen an opportunity and run with it because it paid off well. And you couldn't be more right, Garrett, when you said, I have this vision, I have this audience that I'm reaching, and you, the corporation, would fit in beautifully because I know that these people are also your target audience too. The brands and the missions have to zipper. They have to do this. If it's a mismatch, it will not work. Don't reach out to just any corporation if the vision and the mission aren't in alignment, if the branding is not in alignment, if the targeted audience is not in alignment, it's not going to be a win-win. And then at that point, I think the person's now just looking for a check. You can't approach a business and say, oh, I really just need $500 to help with my travel expenses. If you approach it that way, it's not going to work. And people have really good intuitions. They can hear it in an email. They can see it through a Zoom call instantaneously. So bringing it back to the beginning of our conversation at the top of the hour, if you lead with that heart of servitude, if you say, I love you, corporation, that you are doing X project, and you are aware of what they are putting out into the world, they're going to respect that. You have to build that relationship. You just can't go to a corporation and knock and say, hey, give me money. It doesn't work like that. what I have found in these 30 different collaborations is the corporations want to feel seen and heard too. They don't want to just be seen as a building with a pretty logo on the door. From the very first sponsorship, I led with that, only because I know what it feels like for somebody to come to me in the sense of just them being a little selfish. It makes me feel icky and gross. It's like, oh, okay. I wish they would have known that this is how I'm contributing to my community, or get to know me a little bit better before just, saying, gimme. So anyways, I try to return that in the same sense, whether it's a flute maker, a flute festival, a flute gadget, it doesn't matter. I want to get to know the business owner, and not just the business owner, but the marketing team. There's another little coaching tip. The CEOs don't always make the decision.
No.
The marketing team.
Yes.
They make the decision because it's their job to look for unique opportunities to get the brand out there.
And to build relationships with their audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're seeking out corporate, and this is what I teach in the class, if you're seeking out corporate sponsorships for your concert tour, for your music book, for whatever you have going on, you want to reach out to the marketing department head of that business. And before you even hit send, before you even pick up the phone, like their Facebook page, send them messages, write on their social media posts. Do that. Cultivate a relationship. You can't just pick up and say, hey, write me a check for $1,000. They're going to be like, who the heck are you? I don't know who you are. But if they see that you're interacting with their business, if they see that you are engaging, again, my disclaimer is it has to be from an authentic and genuine place. It can't just be like, oh, I'm hitting like just because I want to hit like. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does.
So start building that relationship. And then once that foundation, and it doesn't take that long. People think like, oh my gosh, now you're asking me to invest like years. No, like start building the relationship. And if you get really good at building these relationships, initiating, cultivating, and scaling these relationships, you can scale a relationship pretty darn fast. Now, I know I'm a social butterfly. I know I'm an extrovert, but I can scale relationships pretty quickly. And it's because I'm putting myself out there. I want to get to know the person. I want to get to know the business. Pick up the phone, not just to say, hey, write me a $500 check. Send an email saying, I just saw a campaign that you just did, PAL Flutes, and I love the initiative of you highlighting your students in this way. Bravo. That takes 2 minutes to send out that email. And then you've initiated it. They appreciate, they respect the fact that you made it a point to get to know them, and then it can start scaling. And then when that opportunity comes to, oh, hey, would you like to sponsor my upcoming tour? It's organic. It's natural. It's not oil and water. Now it's just like, ooh, and it blends together beautifully.
That's right.
So that's my advice. And hopefully that answers your question well. But you're right. And another nugget you said that I want to highlight, you said the corporations want to get involved. They want to be a part of the community. They want to be a part of musicians who are the doers and putting out amazing creative projects out into the world. Don't for a half a second think, I am no blank, a big named flute star or a guitarist or a saxophonist. I'm not this person. You don't have to be. I'm just a little old flute teacher in Forney, Texas. I don't have a huge name like some of these huge flute stars, but Haynes Powell, Blocking, Straubinger, Flutistry, Carolyn Nesbaum, they all wanted to work with me. Why? Because there was something unique and special that I was doing with my collaborators that they wanted to be a part of. And I think that's the imposter syndrome that gets a lot of people and nicks them in the butt. They think, oh, I'm not this rock star. Who am I to reach out? But the funny thing is, these companies actually probably, not that they don't want to work with the rock stars, but 9 times out of 10, what I've learned throughout these 4 years, they want to work, and I'm using air quotes, they want to work with the average musician.
Yeah.
They do. They really do. And they get tickled pink when you reach out and say, oh, wow, I loved this campaign. I love this initiative. I loved whatever it is. I want you to be a part of the next project. Oh my goodness. I mean, I've received a lot of no's, and the no's that I've received, it's because it wasn't that zipper thing. It didn't mesh well. But for that season, it didn't mesh well. Later, sometimes those no's in a particular season, if it didn't work out, what I have found is that corporation will come back later in another quarter or in another year, and they say, hey, it wasn't right then, but could we do something now?
Yeah.
So if you're afraid of a no, I don't see no's as no's. I see no's as maybes, because over half of my corporate sponsorships, so if I've received 25, that's going to be like 12, 13 is half, right? A good half of those yeses were actually no's at first. That's why I say you have to put yourself out there. You have to be okay with the no's, because actually sometimes they are true no's, and that's okay. But sometimes they turn into yeses.
Once you scale that relationship, it's easier to turn it into a yes, too. So where can people go to learn more about that particular course and how they can get their projects funded?
Yeah, sure. So you can go to my website at HeidiKaybegay.com. I have a tab called Products and Services. You just scroll on down, and then you will see that tab labeled Corporate Sponsorships.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Heidi, thanks for playing with me and recording this whole podcast a second time.
Now, am I on for a third time?
We can make that happen.
Okay. Because if you don't do it quick enough, you and I are going to be founders of a second business or something.
I know. We're going to end up with multiple books, and who knows what's going to happen.
So really, you have to put it out today.
It's on the short queue. Trust me.
Perfect. Okay. I'm just giving you a hard time.
And I deserve it.
Well, thank you for having me be here. I really appreciate it. I know we do things through TPM, but being in your space and talking with your people, I don't take it for granted, because you've built something really amazing through TPC, and you should be very proud of the lives that you're touching. And for me to be in your space is very kind and very generous.
My pleasure, Heidi. I think the world of you.
Thanks.
This episode of The Portfolio Composer was brought to you by Dorico 4, the most advanced music notation software ever created. Dorico was designed to save you time and gives you the tools you need to produce beautiful and readable scores fast, so you can spend less time fiddling with menus and rules and more time doing what you love, making music. Now you can take Steinberg's music notation and composition software with you wherever you go with Dorico for iPad. Whether you're a composer, arranger, instrumentalist, teacher, or student, Dorico is the ideal app for producing beautiful sheet music that you can share as a PDF or music XML, or print directly to your AirPrint-enabled printer. Dorico for iPad is available now in the App Store. Learn more at www.dorico.com/iPad. You can also try the full version of Dorico out for 30 days for free by downloading the trial version at www.steinberg.net/TPC. Try it today.